as my wife stepped out of the shower, the steam clinging to her skin like a guilty secret. I looked her dead in the eye and asked the one question that would shatter our 10-year marriage forever. How long has this been going on? My name is David, and until 3 hours ago, I believed I was living the perfect life. I had a beautiful wife named Elena, a successful career in architectural design, and a home that felt like a sanctuary. But sanctuaries are fragile things, built on the shifting sands of trust. It started with a vibration, not a loud sound, but a persistent, rhythmic buzzing that didn't belong to my phone. It was coming from the depths of our walk-in closet, buried beneath a pile of winter coats that shouldn't have been touched in the middle of July. Elena was in the shower, the sound of the water masking my movements. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I was just looking for my misplaced car keys. But when I reached into the pocket of her heavy wool trench coat, my fingers didn't find cold metal keys. They found a burner phone, a cheap, plastic, prepaid device that was currently lighting up with a message from a contact listed only as this. The message read, "He suspects nothing. See you at the usual place tomorrow at noon." My heart didn't just drop. It felt like it had been physically ripped from my chest and replaced with a block of dry ice. I stood there, motionless, as the reality of those 9 words settled into my bones. Who was S? What didn't I suspect? And why was my wife, the woman who promised to love me until her dying breath, hiding a secret communication device in a coat she hadn't worn in months? I heard the water turn off. The sudden silence was deafening. I slipped the phone into my own pocket, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped it. I walked back into the bedroom, trying to regulate my breathing, trying to look like the man I was 5 minutes ago. But that man was dead. In his place was a stranger, a detective in his own home, waiting for the woman he loved to step out and reveal the monster he feared she had become. She emerged, wrapped in a white towel, her hair damp, looking as innocent as the day I met her. That innocence was the first lie. I waited for her to notice the change in the air, the way the light seemed harsher now. She smiled at me, that same warm smile she'd given me every morning for a decade. It was a masterpiece of deception. I didn't smile back. I just stood there, the weight of the burner phone pressing against my thigh like a hot coal. I took a deep breath, the steam from the bathroom filling my lungs, and I spoke the word that would end everything. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. Her smile didn't fade immediately. It drifted away like smoke. She froze, her hand pausing as she reached for her moisturizer. "What are you talking about, David?" she asked, her voice steady, too steady. That was the first sign she was prepared. She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't look confused. She looked like an actress who had just heard her cue. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket and held it up. The screen was still glowing, reflecting the betrayal in my eyes. "This," I said, my voice cracking. "The hidden phone. The messages from S. The usual place. How long, Elena?" The room felt like it was shrinking. The walls, the ones I had designed to be open and airy, were now closing in on us. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked at the phone, then back at me, and for a split second, I saw something in her eyes that I had never seen before. Pity. "David," she whispered, "it's not what you think." It's the oldest cliché in the book of infidelity. It's the phrase every cheater uses when they're caught red-handed. But as she stood there, dripping wet and vulnerable, I realized that the story I was about to hear was far more complex, far more dangerous, and far more heartbreaking than a simple affair. I watched her face carefully, looking for the cracks in her facade. Elena had always been a woman of routine, a woman of grace. We met in college, 2 souls lost in the sprawling library of a prestigious university. She was studying forensic psychology, and I was obsessed with the structural integrity of skyscrapers. We were a perfect match. I built things up, and she understood why they fell down. For 10 years, we were the couple everyone envied. We traveled to Tuscany, we bought a fixer-upper in the suburbs, we talked about children. But as I stood in our bedroom, looking at the burner phone, I realized that the woman I married was a character she had created for my benefit. "If it's not what I think," I said, stepping closer, "then tell me what it is. Who is S? Why are you meeting them in secret?" Why do you have a phone hidden in a winter coat during a heat wave? Elena took a seat on the edge of the bed, her towel slipping slightly. She didn't bother to fix it. Is Sarah, she said. My sister. I blinked. Sarah? Elena's sister had died in a car accident 3 years ago. I was at the funeral. I held Elena's hand as they lowered the casket into the ground. I watched her weep for months. Sarah is dead. Elena, I said, my voice rising. Don't lie to me about this. Don't use her memory to cover up your dirt. Elena looked up at me, and I saw tears welling in her eyes now. But they weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of terror. She's not dead, David. She's in hiding. And if you don't lower your voice, you're going to get us both killed. The room went cold. The air seemed to vanish. Elena explained that 3 years ago, Sarah hadn't died. She had witnessed something she wasn't supposed to see, a high-level corruption ring involving local government officials and a private security firm. The car accident was a setup, an attempt on her life. With the help of a few trusted contacts in the police force, Sarah had faked her death to disappear. Elena was her only link to the outside world. The burner phone was their only way of communicating. The usual place was a safe house 3 towns over where Elena brought her supplies and information. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. But as an architect, I know that a structure is only as strong as its foundation, and the foundation of this story was crumbling. If Sarah was alive, why hadn't Elena told me? We were partners. We shared everything. I couldn't tell you, she sobbed, finally breaking down. They were watching us, David. If you knew, you'd be a target too. I did this to protect you. I looked at the phone again. The message didn't sound like a sister checking in. He suspects nothing. That he was me. My wife had been living a double life for 3 years, looking me in the eye every night, eating dinner with me, sleeping next to me, all while maintaining a massive, dangerous lie. But then a thought occurred to me, a dark, intrusive thought that wouldn't go away. What if the story about Sarah was just another layer of the lie? What if S wasn't Sarah, but someone else? Someone she was actually involved with? I decided to play along. I told her I believed her. I held her while she cried, but my heart was a stone. That night, while she slept, I took the burner phone and did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a tracking software on it. I needed to see the usual place for myself. The next day, I told Elena I had a late meeting at the firm. I watched from a distance as she left the house at 11:15 a.m. I followed her, keeping 3 cars between us, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. She drove past the safe house she had described. She drove past the suburbs and into the industrial district of the city. She pulled up to a nondescript warehouse, a place of rusted steel and broken windows. This wasn't a safe house for a grieving sister. This was a place where deals were made in the shadows. I parked a block away and approached on foot, my pulse thundering in my ears. I found a side door that had been left slightly ajar. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and old paper. I moved quietly, using the skills I'd learned on construction sites to navigate the clutter. I heard voices coming from an office upstairs. A man's voice, low, authoritative, familiar. And then, Elena's voice. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She sounded cold. He found the phone, she said. I told him the Sarah story. He bought it for now, but we have to move the timeline up. He started to ask too many questions. The man replied, "You've done well, Elena. Once the documents are signed, David won't matter anymore. We'll have everything we need to dismantle the firm from the inside. My firm, my life's work. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was corporate espionage personified. She had been sent to me years ago, not as a lover, but as an infiltrator. Every kiss, every I love you, every shared dream was a tactical move in a long-term operation to steal the architectural designs for the city's new infrastructure project, a multi-billion-dollar contract my firm had just won. The S wasn't Sarah. S stood for Silverton, our main competitor. I felt a wave of nausea, so strong I had to lean against a cold brick wall. My entire marriage was a construction of glass, and it was finally shattering. I watched through a crack in the door as the man stepped into the light. It was Marcus Silverton himself. He put a hand on Elena's waist, and she didn't flinch. She leaned into him. The betrayal was complete. I didn't burst in. I didn't make a scene. I realized that if they were this deep, they had precautions. If I confronted them now, I'd likely never leave that warehouse. I backed away, my mind racing. I had to get to the firm. I had to secure the files. But more than that, I had to understand how I had been so blind. I spent the next 4 hours in a fever dream of activity. I called my head of security, a man named Miller who I trusted with my life. We met at a secure location. I told him everything. He didn't look surprised. "David," he said softly, "we've been monitoring some unusual data pings from your home network for months. We thought it was a glitch. We never imagined it was her." We went to the office. We spent the night auditing the servers. It was worse than I thought. Elena hadn't just been stealing designs. She had been planting vulnerabilities. She was setting us up for a catastrophic failure that would bankrupt the firm and leave the city's infrastructure at the mercy of Silverton's inferior, cheaper materials. It was a plan of pure, calculated malice, and she had executed it while lying in my arms. By dawn, I had enough evidence to bury her in Silverton, but I didn't want just a legal victory. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done. I went back home. I arrived just as the sun was beginning to peek over the horizon, casting long, distorted shadows across our lawn. I sat in the living room, in the dark, waiting. Elena came home an hour later. She looked exhausted, but she still managed to put on that mask of concern when she saw me sitting there. "David, you're up early. Is everything okay?" I turned on the lamp. The light hit her, and for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw the predator she was. "I know everything, Elena. I know about Silverton. I know about the warehouse. I know the Sarah story was a lie to buy you time." She didn't move. Her face went blank, the mask finally falling away to reveal a cold, hard surface. "Well," she said, her voice devoid of emotion, "I suppose the honeymoon is over." She sat down across from me, crossing her legs, completely unfazed. "So what now? You call the police? You sue me? By the time you get a court date, the transfers will be complete. You're already ruined, David. You just don't know it yet." I smiled then. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of an architect who had found the one structural flaw his opponent had overlooked. "You're right, Elena. I would be ruined if I hadn't designed the security system for Silverton's own headquarters 5 years ago." Her eyes widened. A flicker of doubt crossed her face. "What does that have to do with anything?" "It means," I said, leaning forward, "that I know where Marcus keeps his private ledger. The one that details his illegal payoffs to the city council. The one that proves you weren't just an employee, but a co-conspirator in a racketeering enterprise. While you were at the warehouse yesterday, Miller wasn't just auditing my servers. He was visiting Marcus." The silence that followed was heavy. The power dynamic in the room shifted so violently it was almost physical. Elena's confidence began to leak out of her. She looked around the room, as if seeing the exits for the first time. "You're bluffing," she whispered. "Am I? Check your phone, Elena. Not the burner. Your real one." She pulled it out, her fingers trembling. A news alert flashed on the screen. "Marcus Silverton arrested in connection with bribery scandal. Accomplices sought." Her face went pale. The reality of her situation finally crashed down on her. She wasn't a master manipulator anymore. She was a sinking ship. "David, please," she started, her voice cracking for real this time. "I was forced into it. Silverton had leverage over me. My family." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't mention your family. Don't mention Sarah. You used a dead girl's name to cover your tracks. You're a ghost, Elena, and ghosts don't get to ask for mercy." I stood up. I felt a strange sense of peace. The pain was still there, a dull ache that would likely never go away, but the uncertainty was gone. I knew exactly who she was, and I knew exactly what I had to do. She tried to run. She actually tried to bolt for the front door. But Miller was already there, standing on the porch with 2 uniformed officers. I watched as they read her rights. I watched as they placed the handcuffs on her slender wrists. She looked back at me one last time, her eyes full of a mixture of rage and desperation. "I did love you in the beginning," she screamed as they led her down the driveway. I didn't answer. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. Love isn't a feeling. It's a series of choices. and she had chosen betrayal every single day for years. After she was gone, the house felt cavernous. I walked through the rooms, seeing them for what they were, a stage set for a play that had finally closed. I went into the bathroom. The steam from her shower the day before was long gone, but the scent of her perfume still lingered. It was a sweet, floral scent that now smelled like decay. I looked at the shower. I remembered the way she looked stepping out of it, the way I had asked that fateful question. I realized then that I hadn't just lost a wife. I had lost my sense of reality. How do you trust the world when the person closest to you is a stranger? I spent the next few weeks in a blur of depositions, meetings with lawyers, and rebuilding the firm's security. Marcus Silverton took a plea deal, turning on Elena to save himself. He claimed she was the mastermind, the one who approached him with the plan. Elena, in turn, claimed she was a victim of his coercion. They tore each other apart in the press, two predators fighting over the scraps of their ruined lives. I stayed silent. I didn't give interviews. I didn't post on social media. I just worked. I channeled all my pain, all my anger into my designs. I redesigned the city project, making it stronger, more resilient, a testament to what can be built when the foundation is honest. One afternoon, Miller came in my office. He looked older, tired from the ordeal. "She wants to see you, David," he said. "She's in the county jail. She says she has something you need to hear. Something about Sarah." I felt a chill. The name still had power over me. "I'm not going, Miller. She's done. She says it's not what you think." Again, he handed me a small, handwritten note. It was in Elena's elegant script. "The grave is empty, David. Check for yourself." I didn't want to go. I knew it was likely another trap, another mind game. But the seed of doubt had been planted. I couldn't build anything new while the old ghosts were still haunting me. I drove to the cemetery where Sarah was supposedly buried. It was a gray, overcast day, the kind that makes everything look like a charcoal sketch. I met a private investigator there, a man I'd hired to bring a ground-penetrating radar. We stood over the plot. The machine hummed as it scanned the earth. The investigator looked at the screen, his brow furrowed. "Sir," he said, looking up at me with a bewildered expression, "there's nothing down there. No casket. No remains. The ground hasn't been disturbed in years." My breath hitched. She hadn't lied about that. Sarah was alive. But why? If Sarah was alive, why did Elena need to steal from me? Why the elaborate corporate espionage? I went to the jail. I sat across from Elena behind a thick pane of glass. She looked haggard, the stress of the last few weeks finally showing. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice a whisper. Elena leaned in close to the glass. "She's not in hiding from the government, David. She's in hiding from you." I recoiled as if she'd slapped me. "Me? Why would she be hiding from me? I barely knew her." "You didn't know her at all," Elena said, a dark smile touching her lips. "You didn't know that your firm, the one your father started, was built on the blood of her family. You didn't know that the land your flagship tower sits on was stolen from our grandfather through a series of illegal foreclosures and threats. Sarah didn't fake her death to escape criminals. She faked it so she could work from the shadows to take back what was ours." I felt the world tilt. My father? My father was a good man, a pillar of the community. "You're lying," I spat. "Check the archives, David. Check the 1994 acquisition records. Look for the name Rossi. That was our real name before we changed it to Blendin. We weren't sent to destroy you because of a contract. We were sent to destroy you because of a debt." I left the jail in a daze. I went straight to the firm's basement, to the physical archives that hadn't been digitized. I spent the night digging through dusty boxes and yellowed papers. And there it was, the Rossi acquisition. My father hadn't just bought the land. He had used a shell company to harass the family, eventually driving Sarah and Elena's father to take his own life. My father had built his empire on the ruins of their family. Elena hadn't been a random infiltrator. She was a daughter seeking justice. The S in the phone wasn't Silverton. It wasn't Sarah. It was sisters. They were working together, not for corporate greed, but for a twisted form of reparations. I sat on the floor of the archive room, surrounded by the evidence of my father's sins. I realized that in this story, I wasn't the hero. I wasn't the victim. I was the legacy of a monster. I didn't try to clear my father's name. I couldn't. The truth was there, written in cold, hard facts. I didn't try to help Elena, either. She had still committed crimes, still deceived me, still used a marriage as a weapon. But I understood her now. I understood the fire that drove her. I liquidated my assets. I stepped down from the firm. I used the money to set up a trust for the families my father had displaced, including the Rossi estate. I kept only enough to live a quiet, simple life in a different city. Before I left, I went back to the cemetery one last time. I stood by the empty grave. A woman was standing there, her back to me. She was wearing a heavy wool trench coat, even though it was a warm autumn day. She turned around, and I saw the face of a woman I'd seen in photos, but never in person. Sarah. She didn't look like a ghost. She looked tired but resolute. Elena told me you found out, she said. I'm sorry it had to be this way, David. You weren't your father, but you were living in his house. I know, I said. I've left the house. It's yours now. Everything is yours. She nodded slowly. What will you do now? I looked out over the rows of headstones, the silent markers of 1,000 different stories. I'm going to build something that doesn't need to be hidden in a closet, I said. I'm going to build something honest. I walked away, leaving the sisters to reclaim their history. As for me, I learned that the hardest structures to build aren't made of steel or glass. They're made of truth. And sometimes you have to let everything you love burn to the ground before you can see the sky again. I moved to a small coastal town, far from the skyscrapers and the corporate wars. I started a small carpentry shop. I work with my hands now, feeling the grain of the wood, the honesty of the materials. There are no double meanings in a well-built chair. There are no secrets in a sturdy table. I still think of Elena. I think of the shower, the steam, and the question that changed my life. I wonder if there's a version of our story where we could have been happy. But then I remember the burner phone. I remember the look in her eyes. And I realized that the person I loved never existed. She was a ghost I created to fill a void in my own life. Now the void is gone. It's been replaced by a quiet, steady peace. I am alone, but I'm no longer living a lie. And in the end, that's the only foundation that matters. Trust is a fragile thing, easily broken and rarely mended. But sometimes, the breaking is necessary to reveal the truth hidden beneath. If you enjoyed this intense journey into the shadows of a marriage, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more AI-generated stories that will keep you guessing until the very end. What would you do if you found a secret phone in your house? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep looking for the truth, no matter where it leads.